Hello, my name is Sherry Murphy, and I've been given the task of giving you a crash course on inclusion and collaboration. What is inclusion, you might ask? Well, according to research, an inclusive classroom might contain several students with special needs who are mainstreamed full-time into the general classroom, or one or two students who spend time each day in both a special education classroom and a general education classroom. So, in retrospect, an inclusion class contains both students being served in the general education population as well as the special education population. According to an article written by Kirby, the goal of inclusion is to do away with labels and to create a classroom environment where all students can learn regardless of their needs and their abilities. All students, regardless of abilities, becomes worthy of individualized attention in the general education classroom. Also, according to Kirby, the goal of the least restrictive environment, also known as LRE, is to ensure that students with disabilities are educated with their peers. When students are afforded an appropriate education with their peers in the least restrictive environment, they are being prepared for a future of inclusion. The goal is to get these students ready for the real world, and the world is full of inclusion. These students must be able to go to work and function in their post-secondary life. Once they go and apply for a job, they will not have the option of being in a self-contained area. They will be fully included with the rest of the world. And our job as educators is to make sure that these students are prepared and fully ready to go work and function in an inclusion setting. Now, there are many benefits that come along with inclusion. One benefit, of course, is student achievement, and that seems to be the overall goal. Normally, in inclusion classes, students that suffer with special needs perform better academically. Kirby again states in her article that students in inclusive settings earn higher grades in math, science, social studies, and language arts. Additionally, students in the inclusive classroom had fewer absences than that of those in the resource room. So the students who are generally placed in the inclusion classes, not only do they perform better because they are trying to, of course, keep up with their other peers, but they generally want to come to school because they're not secluded or off to one side of the building. They're able to go from class to class with other students and function as such. A truly inclusive education will not only include students with disabilities, but will also offer those students the same opportunity of those of their peers. And that's what we want. We want them to not feel as if just because they might have a specific learning disability or they might be labeled with autism or Asperger's, we don't want them to feel that they are different. We want them to feel that they are the same and that they can learn and gain the same education as those students who do not have disabilities. Now, a very important part of the inclusion setting is the educators. Now, what are the roles of the educators within this model? The role of both the special education teacher and the general education teacher are equally important. Although training might be a little different, but still nonetheless, both are very important. According to research conducted by Gavish, a few tasks of the special education teacher within the inclusion setting includes conducting group or individual instruction, whether it's inside the general classroom or separated, planning, conducting, and writing IEPs, preparing accurate teaching materials for the use of the general education teachers, and advising the general education teachers as well as advising the parents. The role of the general education teacher is to provide instruction of the curriculum differentiated so that all students, regardless of ability levels, can learn. In their article, Gavish also addresses how the teacher preparation for the two jobs a little different. Gavish states that their training, which is separated from the general education teacher's training, usually involves specialization and teaching students with specific disabilities, multidisciplinary teamwork, working with families of children with special needs, inclusion of students with special needs, assistive technology, assessment of students with disabilities, classroom management, and curriculum planning. Although inclusion normally benefits the students, it can pose issues for teachers trying to co-teach. Based on several experiences personally with the inclusion model, I know it can be difficult to share the load and the responsibility of educating an entire class of students with another teacher who might have different ideas or just a completely different teaching method than you. That is why it is vitally important for education leaders to pair the right co-teaching team together. No one teacher should be above the other, and no one should feel as if they are an assistant within the classroom. Now, this should also be evident to the students that both teachers are equally responsible for giving them the best education possible. There are a few co-teaching models that could help to make the inclusion world more successful. The first strategy is interactive teaching. This model of co-teaching calls for the teachers to switch roles amongst each other. While one teacher might be leading the entire class in instruction, the other teacher might be walking around making observations and monitoring the learning, making sure that all students are on task and following directions. The second model of co-teaching is alternative teaching. Now, this model consists of one teacher possibly leading small group instruction and the other teacher leading the entire class. Sometimes one teacher might have to leave the classroom during this model so that it's not too much going on at one time and that the students don't get overly stimulated by hearing two different teachers talking at once. So sometimes it's best to separate the class and taking mixed group of students, out to work on maybe some lessons that some kids might not have understood that well, or just touching up and brushing up on some skills. The next model is parallel teaching. Now, for this model, the class is separated and both teachers are teaching the same exact lesson, just in a smaller group setting. Again, this might work within the classroom, but this might also have to be separated. It depends on your students and your class. Sometimes the setup of the classroom might not allow for this to happen. But it works best if the ability levels of the students are mixed, and this model helps to keep all students engaged and active in the lesson. Another very successful model of co-teaching is station teaching. Station teaching involves both teachers observing small groups of students as they transition from task to task. Now, station teaching for the students can be very fun, but classroom management is key. It is very easy for students to get off topic. That's why the monitoring and observations is a must. Now, one thing to remember while teaching inclusion is that you have to work together. You are now in a partnership. Now remember, the students that we are serving, they are very intelligent and they can pick up on tension amongst adults. This makes it very easy for them to try to play teacher against teacher, causing you to lose classroom management and order. This can make the learning environment very hostile, and it can also damage student achievement. And that goes against our goal. Also, another very important task is planning. It is extremely important and it can help to even out the load of instruction. In order for all students to be successful in the inclusion setting, both teachers have to be actively involved, and without proper planning, this is impossible. Both teachers must also be on the same page with rules and regulations, as well as classroom procedures. Both teachers also need to be aware of the needs of all students that suffer with disabilities. It is very important to understand the type of students that you're dealing with, because it can be difficult to help a student when you do not understand what their ability level is, or if you do not know the accommodations that have been required to help them learn and perform better. Both teachers need to know what they are dealing with so they can both adjust the lesson to fit the needs of all students. Remember, I said both teachers need to know. It's not just the job of the special educator to know what the accommodations are or what the disability is. It is just as important for the general education teacher to be made aware of what accommodations need to be made also. Not only do you need to be aware of accommodations, but you also need to be aware of learning styles so that learning can be made fun for all students and so that they can also grasp the concepts of what you are teaching. Success in the inclusion setting is very possible, and although it will take some work, it's well worth it. If all who are involved do their share and work with one another, then student achievement has no choice but to follow. I hope you gained something from my tutorial, and I hope that this helps you to become a better educator and co-teacher. Thank you so much for your time.